Prime Field.
A forward averages just 13.8 points per game, takes only 10 shots a night, yet walks away as FIBA U18 Eurobasket MVP, shooting nearly 62% from the floor, dominating the glass, and disrupting everything without needing the ball. That forward is Sara Okeke. Welcome to Prime Field. This story does not begin with the highest ranked name on the recruiting board. On paper, that distinction belongs to Olivia Vukosa. But inside UConn's larger international experiment, the most critical piece is not the most decorated prospect. It is the one who makes the other pieces function together. Without Sara Okeke, UConn's projected 2026-27 front court looks powerful but conventional. Traditional rim protectors, interior scorers, and size that sits mostly in the paint. With her, it becomes something else entirely. A dynamic, switchable, rim-running lineup built to solve modern basketball's hardest problem, the forward who can defend everywhere and finish anything. This documentary examines one central question. How does a player who does not need the ball become the most important recruit of the decade for UConn women's basketball, and the connector that could swing the balance of power in the sport's premier rivalry? From her EuroBasket profile to her fit alongside Jana El Alfy, to the recruiting battle with South Carolina, this is the story of the piece that makes the experiment real. And it begins with the role she already plays better than most her age. On the surface, UConn's recent recruiting push reads like a simple talent grab. A top 3 global prospect in Olivia Vukosa, a high upside international forward in Jana El Alfy, and now, potentially, an MVP-level FIBA performer in Sara Okeke. But the deeper story is structural, not just star-driven. Vukosa and El Alfy project as classic front-court anchors. They defend the rim. They operate in and around the paint. They provide size, strength, and interior scoring. Those tools are valuable, but they are also familiar. The modern game demands something different at one of those forward spots. A player who can move laterally on the perimeter, switch onto smaller guards, chase shooters off screens, then still rebound at a high level and finish plays in transition. That is where Okeke changes the equation. The research brief makes one argument clear. Without Okeke, UConn risks fielding a front line that is too slow and traditional. With her, the entire configuration shifts. The lineup becomes faster, more flexible, and better aligned with how championship teams now defend and attack. In other words, Okeke is not simply a nice addition. She is the connector. She is the player who allows Vukosa and El Alfy to play to their strengths while she addresses the gaps they cannot cover alone. That connector role comes into focus through a specific template often used to describe her. At the FIBA U18 Eurobasket, Okeke did not dominate the ball. She dominated the game around it. Across the tournament, she averaged 13.8 points per game on just 10 field goal attempts. She converted 37 of 60 shots, 61.7% from the floor. For a tournament MVP, that is unusually low volume and unusually high efficiency. The rest of the stat line explains why it works. Okeke pulled down 7.2 rebounds per game, with a particularly striking profile on the offensive glass, 3.8 offensive rebounds per 40 minutes, and 3.3 on the defensive end. That balanced ratio reflects activity on both sides of the floor, not just standing under the rim. She added 1.2 steals and 0.7 blocks per game, with 3 steals in the MVP performance against Finland. In that final, she scored 23 points on 11 of 13 shooting, grabbed 7 rebounds, and again did so without functioning as a primary initiator. She finished plays, cleared space, and disrupted opponents. The box score shows a pattern. Efficient scoring without volume, high-level rebounding, or defensive activity built on deflections, and steals more than traditional shot blocking. That profile has been compared to the Draymond Green archetype, not as a personality, but as a role. A player who does not require a high usage rate to reshape the game. A player who screens, rolls, cuts, switches, and cleans up everything. For UConn, that type of player is not a luxury. It is a specific answer to a specific problem. How to make star bigs function in a system that values movement, pace, and versatility. The next question is how this role intersects with a player who already sits at the center of UConn's long-term frontcourt plans. Jana El Alfy arrived at UConn as a high-ceiling international talent. Her performance at the 2023 FIBA U19 World Cup confirmed that reputation. There, she averaged 21.4 points and 11.0 rebounds per game before suffering a non-contact Achilles rupture. That injury reshaped her trajectory. El Alfy missed the entire 2023-24 season. When she returned for UConn's 2025 championship run, she started 27 games, but averaged just 5.0 points and 5.1 rebounds. The talent remained, but the usage and impact lagged behind what her junior national team resume suggested. Geno Auriemma has described her as one of the most talented players he has ever coached. Yet even elite talent cannot erase an injury profile or compress a multi-year recovery arc. This is where Okeke's presence matters in roster construction terms. At 6'3" with proven rebounding and defensive instincts, Okeke offers elite depth at the forward spot from day one. She does not need plays called for her to contribute. She runs, rebounds, and defends immediately. That allows UConn to avoid over-relying on El Alfy's minutes as she continues to ramp up, and it reduces pressure on other frontcourt players like Sarah Strong and Serah Williams. In effect, Okeke becomes a bridge. She bridges the gap between El Alfy's present production and her projected ceiling. She bridges the gap between traditional size and modern mobility, and she bridges the lineup from a too-big, paint-heavy configuration to a frontcourt that can stretch, switch, and sustain over a long season. That bridge is most visible on the defensive end, where the modern game demands a very specific skill set. By 2025, one principle is clear across elite levels of the women's game. Championships are rarely won by teams whose bigs cannot guard in space. Screen-heavy offenses force forwards and centers into difficult decisions. Stay in drop coverage and guards get clean looks. Switch everything and bigs must slide with smaller players, contain drives, and then still recover to rebound. Within that context, UConn's projected front line presents a contrast. Vukosa at the youth international level has profiled as a traditional rim protector. At the U17 World Cup, she averaged 2.6 blocks per game, emphasizing vertical defense at the basket. El Alfy, likewise, leans toward physical interior presence and paint work. Okeke's numbers tell a different story. Her 0.7 blocks per game are modest compared to Vukosa's totals, but she recorded 1.2 steals per game. That distribution, more steals than blocks, is often a marker of a perimeter-engaged defender, a player who jumps passing lanes, shows on the wing, and has the lateral quickness to contest away from the rim. Her offensive rebounding rate, 7.6 boards per 40 minutes, also suggests comfort operating in space, slipping out of actions and crashing from different angles rather than simply camping under the basket. External evaluations have compared her to the Agumage sisters, versatile forwards who can defend multiple positions, run the floor, and fit into a variety of schemes. For UConn, adding that profile alongside two more traditional bigs addresses a structural issue. It inserts a switchable defender into a front court that otherwise leans toward rim protection. That blend is not just a tactical preference. It is also a recruiting message, especially when the primary competitor sits in Columbia, South Carolina. The battle for Sara Okeke is not an isolated recruitment. It is the next chapter in an ongoing arms race between UConn and South Carolina. South Carolina's 2025-26 frontcourt is formidable on paper. Mariam Dauda at 6'4", Joyce Edwards at 6'3", already an all-SEC level performer. Chloe Kitts at 6'2", leading the team with 7.7 rebounds per game. The Gamecocks possess size, physicality, and depth in the paint. What they do not feature is a clear analog to Okeke, a switchable, internationally proven wing forward with MVP-level FIBA credentials. This gap intersects directly with recruiting narratives. Vukosa has already chosen UConn over South Carolina, a decision that undercut the notion that the sport's top international prospects would naturally gravitate toward the program framed as an emerging dynasty. If Okeke makes the same choice, the pattern becomes harder to dismiss. Both Okeke and Kitts share ties to DME Academy, a program with its own growing influence in the development of elite prospects. If Okeke selects UConn, it signals that the perceived development pathway in stores carries weight with the same ecosystem that produced one of South Carolina's key forwards. In that scenario, UConn would not simply win a single recruitment, it would send a message. For elite global forwards who want to compete for championships while playing a modern, versatile role, UConn offers a defined blueprint. That message only gains strength when the statistical projections are considered. The EuroBasket MVP run provides a clear statistical foundation for projection. Across 121 minutes over 6 games, Okeke's production scales impressively on a per-40 basis. Her totals project to 27.4 points per 40 minutes on 19.8 field goal attempts. At 61.7% shooting from the field, she adds 14.2 rebounds, 2.3 steals, and 1.3 blocks per 40 minutes. The MVP game against Finland offers a sharper snapshot. 23 points on 11 of 13 shooting, with 7 rebounds in 28 minutes. Extrapolated to a 40-minute frame, that scoring rate reaches 32.9 points. No college system will hand over 40 uninterrupted minutes, or replicate FIBA usage patterns exactly. But conservative estimates within the brief suggest that if Okeke averages 25 to 30 minutes per game in a UConn lineup, her production could realistically land in the 17-21 point range with roughly 10.7 to 14.2 rebounds per night. Those numbers align with immediate double-double potential. They also meet the threshold for all big East-level impact as a freshman, particularly when combined with her efficiency and low-usage style. In practical terms, this means Okeke projects not as depth, but as a primary factor in UConn's front-court performance from the moment she steps on campus. And the matchup implications become especially sharp when the lens zooms back to South Carolina. When UConn and South Carolina meet, the front-court matchup often determines the tone of the game. On one side, South Carolina deploys its rotation of forwards, Dowda, Edwards, Kitts, and others with size and length. Their profiles emphasize interior strength, rebounding, and paint control. On the other, UConn's projected lineup features Vukosa as a rim protector, El Alfy as a physical interior scorer, and, if the recruitment is successful, Okeke as the moving piece between them and the perimeter. In that environment, Okeke's value becomes highly specific. She is not tasked with shutting down a single South Carolina forward in isolation. Instead, her job is defined by constant movement, switching onto whichever ball handler South Carolina frees with a screen, recovering to the weak side when a drive collapses the defense, crashing the offensive glass from different launch points to exploit any lapse in box-outs. Her 7.6 offensive rebounds per 40 minutes at EuroBasket suggests an ability to turn even well-defended possessions into second-chance opportunities. Her 1.2 steals per game, compared with more block-heavy profiles, indicate that she can create turnovers in spaces where traditional bigs are less comfortable. This is not simply about height or wingspan. It is about archetype. In matchups where South Carolina's depth, size, and physical endurance typically wear down opponents, a player like Okeke gives UConn an answer that does not mirror the Gamecocks' strengths, it counters them. That matchup-specific value flows back into the broader thesis of her recruitment. Step back from the individual numbers and a clear structure appears. Without Sara Okeke, UConn's projected 2026-27 frontcourt centers on traditional strengths, Vukosa as a shot-blocking anchor, El Alfy as a developing physically imposing interior scorer, Strong and Williams adding depth around them. It is a front line capable of winning, but one that still carries a familiar vulnerability, the lack of a true switchable forward who excels in space, embraces a low-usage offensive role, and leverages international experience into instinctive play. With Okeke, that vulnerability shifts into a strength. Every forward in the rotation can move without the ball. Multiple bigs can switch onto guards. Offensive rebounding becomes a collective weapon rather than an occasional advantage. In the international experiment, recruiting, developing, and deploying globally sourced front-court talent takes on a completed form. In that sense, the brief central claim is straightforward. Okeke may not be the highest-ranked recruit on paper, but she is the one who makes the system coherent. She is the contingency plan for El Alfy's ongoing return from major injury. She's the defensive answer to the modern game's most common problem. She is the recruiting statement that could cement UConn's position atop the international talent pipeline. Her legacy, if the recruitment is finalized and the projections hold, would extend beyond personal accolades. It would be measured in how fully she allows UConn to play the version of basketball it has been building toward. Championship-level play in an era where versatility, not just size, defines who stays on top. In that frame, the conclusion is not about hype. It is about structure. For UConn, Sara Okeke is not simply another five-star addition. She is the connector piece, the player whose presence could turn an ambitious international experiment into the foundation of the program's next championship run.
Prime Field.